So what I'd like to pose to you today is maybe a way forward to take a good organization that's applying lean, TPM, or any continuous improvement process and really expand it and accelerate it to become a world-class organization. So we get involved in organizations whereby they've probably been doing some of these techniques for 10, 15, 20 years. And we are invited in to try and improve the performance of those businesses. So what I'm going to share with you today is what we believe at the moment is the key ingredient to make change, okay, in many, many cases. And that is leadership, okay, and shop floor excellence. Okay, so at least we've got the right title. Well done. Right, well, let's make a start then. So, organization is HENCAN, and we believe that you can really lump, structure, call it what you will, a continuous improvement program probably into three elements, all of which need focus and an effort in order to deliver an effective world-class program. And those are leadership, okay, the organizational structure, the competence of the leadership, and also the ability to change the culture. And what I mean by culture is the organizational habit, the things that we do every day naturally without thinking. And I'll major on that a lot over the next hour. What we've also got is tools and techniques. You know, you'll have them badged in different ways. You're talking about end-to-end supply chain, and I've heard lots of people talking about Lean and Six Sigma and all these different techniques. But at the end of the day, most of them are tools, yeah? Tools and techniques, Kaizens, one-point lessons, value stream maps, etc., etc. Tools, and that's what we mean by that. What we also think you need to consider is not just the tools, but also the roadmap. Often what we find in organizations is that they may be applying Kaizen, they may be trying to develop a lean organization, but what often is the case is that they don't necessarily do that in a systematic way, okay? They tend to not be clear about doing that efficiently and effectively, particularly if you want to drive a program at pace. You may get improvement naturally, but if you really want to get to an improvement at pace, you need to think about this very, very carefully, okay, the way you do the roadmap. So, as I say, I think the big distinction we tend to find in most organizations, generally tools and techniques, I think if we spoke to most people who are doing lean or TPM in this room, they pretty well know what the tools are, okay? You're not really going to convince many people who've been doing lean for a few years that they need to be advised how the technique should work. It's generally there. It can be enhanced, can be improved, and I'll give you an example of that shortly as we go through it. So that's an area that I don't really want to convince or discuss with you today. Maybe there's something on roadmap. I think there's a lot of companies whose roadmap isn't that clear. And as I say, what we're trying to do here is drive organizations to become world-class at pace. So the technique I'll show you today, and I'll just touch on it a little bit, was applied with one organization in Philips over the last couple of years. In 18 months, we were able to apply this technique such that we took 11.5 million euro out of the cost base by having a very rapid and agile application of Kaizen, okay? But last but not least, the most important element is the last one there, leadership. If you want to distinguish between a good company and a great company, time and time and time again, the distinction that we find is not the tools. Sometimes the roadmap, but generally people get to understand that eventually, that they need a roadmap. But the key differentiator is leadership. Now what's interesting, most of the people in this room will be here because they're technically competent, generally. You tend to get promoted, you tend to pass your academic path by being technically competent. What you're not necessarily is, and don't take this personally, emotionally competent or behaviorally competent. So an absolute gap. Most of us get promoted, as they always say, to a level of incompetence, and that's generally distinguished by your inability to engage people and drive the organization as a whole. So what I'm going to talk about today is leadership. So how do we take all you incredibly bright people, not just you, but all the people in your organisation that you need to leverage and influence, how the heck do we get everybody on board, singing to the same tune, singing to the same agenda, and really making your organisations not just good, but as best we possibly can? Right. So, leadership it is. That's what we're going to focus in on. Who's ever done in their organisation 5S? This is a supply chain conference, is it? Hands up who's done 5S, okay? How many of you, right, keep your hands up please, okay? How many of you have had a programme that has failed? And what I mean by that, okay, you've introduced 5S, you've had an improvement, you've got people engaged, but then you've never sustained it. Wow, that's a lot, isn't it? Almost, I say 80%. And the other 20%, I suggest you go back and have a closer look, all right? So, why is it then, do you think, that 5S fails? Would anybody like to give me a comment on that? Hands up who's done 5S, okay? How many of you, right, keep your hands up please, okay? How many of you have had a programme that has failed? And what I mean by that, okay, you've introduced 5S, you've had an improvement, you've got people engaged, but then you've never sustained it. Wow, that's a lot, isn't it? Almost, I say 80%. And the other 20%, I suggest you go back and have a closer look, all right? So, why is it then, do you think, that 5S fails? Would anybody like to give me a comment on that? Hang on, one at a time, please, okay? Any ideas? Do you tend to find it's okay when it comes to sustainability? Right, thank you very much.
Well, the problem, as usual, was in the culture.
In the culture?
Yeah. We were speaking about leadership.
You've got a loud voice, but would you mind speaking to this? Because what we want to do is keep all the evidence till later, okay?
Oh, okay. So from my point of view, the problem was in a culture, in approach of a team. It is in a matter of fact, it is related to the leadership skills and the leadership attitude. But from my point of view, the consequence is leadership. But the phenomena is a culture. So that's my personal impression.
So what aspects, I won't ask you more than one question, but what aspects of culture failed, you think, or were not compatible for a successful 5S programme?
Well, it is related to a micro-environmental phenomena, such as geographical, such as the mindset. Well, the mindset is related to the same thing, thank you. It is also related to the phase of a master plan where your company or your organization is in that particular moment. Meaning, if you have some kind of transition process and you have some targets really clearly set, and you're on your way up to get into it, to succeed. Sometimes and very often, one of the problems is human error. Why do we have human error? Because we have some lack of expectancy in the rules set by the manpower, by the executors.
Okay. Good. Anyway, that's enough. I'm the one presenting. Thank you very much. Cheers. Anybody else would like to have a go? Anybody else who's done 5S who's failed? Come on, don't be shy. Anybody else? Oh, what a shy. It's terrible this, David, isn't it? Terrible. Oh, thank goodness for that. Thank goodness for that. Another bottle of champagne for this gentleman. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I cannot say that it didn't succeed in all areas because we tried to introduce in different departments. But, I mean, there are different aspects. First of all, it's lead by example. So, I mean, it's something that has to be a habit.
Yes.
And we all know that in order to have this habit, we need to live this as something. So this is not something that we want to pursue and to check every day and to force someone to do it. Absolutely. But it has to be a habit and it has to go from us.
Absolutely.
That we live this. Yes, that we live this.
Yeah.
and this is the main difference.
Absolutely right. Thank you for that. And that's the essence of what I'm trying to explain. So, just for you people who are not familiar. Oh, excellent. Another one there.
Just say like this. I think the key is one person, ownership.
Ownership. Well done. Excellent. So let me just talk about those comments that were made there. Here, David, take that. You can have that. Cheers. Thank you very much. Right. So, for you who are not familiar with the concept of 5S, there may be some people in the room. Basically, it's a workplace optimization technique where the whole idea is to engage the workforce, create ownership, and the workforce doesn't necessarily have to be in a traditional factory environment. It can be in the office or in, let's say, the new product introduction methodology. It can be in all areas, yeah? And the idea is that you have ownership by the people who are doing the activity to lay out their work environment, and it can be both a hard environment and a soft environment, so it's optimized and it's done in the best way possible by eliminating waste. Don't want to get lost in that. But generally what happens is that over a period of time, you start off and you kick these things off, and the leadership generally lead it, and they get into a position whereby they work with the workforce and they get a new standard, okay? A new standard of performance, a new way of working, a new layout, okay? And then generally what happens, and to give you an analogy, I don't know if you've ever done this in Serbia, but there used to be a UK old music hall act. And the act was this, is that a guy would come on stage, okay, and he would have a pole like this, yeah? And he'd have a plate on the top. And he'd start spinning this plate, yeah, on the pole. And then he would go over, he'd get another pole and another plate, and another pole and another plate, and another pole, until eventually, like this huge stage here, he would end up with almost 100 poles with plates spinning, okay? Now, unfortunately, most of us aren't capable of doing that. We need some help. And what we need to do in a world-class organisation is we need to get other people to take responsibility to have that pole and spin the plate. So, what tends to happen is that you have a situation, let's say 5S as an analogy. 5S might be, by the way, we have the pole, we spin the plate. And we have a lot of interest in that, a lot of curiosity, and it works for a while. When the manager or the leader then goes over to the next pole to teach somebody else, what tends to happen? What tends to happen? Well, generally what happens is the pole, the guy holding the pole, sees the manager go away, not showing interest, boom, and it's fallen on the floor, yeah? Okay? So our technique, what you need to do as a leader is to ensure that the standards and the act are owned by other people. They're owned by the workforce. So you need to sell it to them that it's a good thing to do and it's valuable. And not only that, it's no good just spinning at one speed, that plate. You've got to get them involved in increasing the speed and making things go faster and better on a continuous basis. So leadership, that's generally one of the issues, is responsible for creating ownership. So thank you very much for that. That's excellent. For engaging the workforce in improving performance at every level, okay? And to do that, you need to create a culture change. So let's just go through how do we go about doing that? So what we need is we need a structure. So as we come in as technical, capable people, what we need to have is a framework that can help us to engage the workforce to be able to drive the program on the leadership, from a leadership perspective. And we have all these elements. We've got, I'll go through each one of these in a second, but this is an agenda that's generally missing from a continuous improvement program where it's done explicitly. Often done implicitly, but not explicitly. So you've got business opportunity assessments, you've got setting direction, driving performance, leading change, and I'll just touch on this piece around creating the desired culture and also shop floor excellence that achieves that. So I'm going to go through each one of those to try and explain it, and then we're going to focus in on one area, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an exercise. So the first thing we've got to be doing, if we want to actually have an improvement that's working at pace and driving the business effectively, it's got to be linked to the business goals at some stage. What you also need to do is a bit of a health check. You've got to reflect on your own organisation. Where is it strong and where is it weak relatively to the business opportunities that exist outside? Okay. Now, it's interesting here. We could have a debate about this all day long. I'm not talking about setting strategy at this stage. This is understanding within your business environment what you're good at and what you're not good at. So, for example, if you're looking at agility, maybe we don't have it, we accept that that's something that we probably want to do. How agile are you? Is that a challenge to you? You know, so that's something to consider. So, what we look at, first of all, is establishing the gap and the key challenges, not subjectively, but based on facts and data. How do we perform against the general benchmarks in the market? You know, what's our productivity rate? What's our responsiveness? What's our lead time? Okay? How many products do we produce every period? Okay? What's our cost base? Etc., etc. Okay? So that's one of the areas. Oops. The second one is then setting direction. So in this case, what we're trying to do is identify those KPIs, clarify our strategy, and then our KPIs and how they link to the organisation at every level. You've probably come across it in policy deployment. But in particular, how you are going to drive the behaviours of the organisation in a particular fashion. So what we're not talking about here is just purely looking at a measure, but we're also linking it to behaviour. So if I measure you on something, and it's in your performance review for the year and your bonus, you generally will drive your whole year based on that particular measure. So if you think about that, getting the measures right and also maybe modifying them throughout the year as you hit hurdles is really important. Okay? The next part is driving performance. And this is the engine of what we do and is often ignored, and it tends to be quite the time horizon we tend to look at tends to be too long. So what we're looking at here is generating an engine to drive performance in such a way that we're constantly trying to apply continuous improvement to the pace and the rate. So we're not talking here purely about, by the way, we know what our targets are, let's have regular meetings and drive and we'll have Kaizens. Yes, that's part of it. But what we're looking for is how can we do it quicker and better every day, yeah? Both at the corporate level, both at the site level, both at the end-to-end supply chain level, and maybe even right down to the shop floor, wherever the shop floor happens to be, okay? So think about that. That's possibly not what you're doing. Are you applying continuous improvement to the rate of change? Am I accelerating? Am I in fourth gear, trying to go up a hill, yeah? Or am I dropping it down into second gear to accelerate away and adjust my organisation to get the right acceleration and pace? You probably don't do that. I certainly didn't. And then the other one is leading change. Now, this is the cultural element, okay? So how do you lead change? Now, there's a couple of things here. You are perfectly designed as an organisation that you work in to get the performance that you get today. Does that make any sense? We're perfectly designed to be okay, but we're not perfectly designed to be world-class necessarily. And so please forgive me if you are world-class. I'm sure there's some organisations in this room are in that position. Now, what do I mean by that? Why am I stressing that? Well, what is interesting is that your performance in your organisation, interestingly enough, is not structural necessarily at the beginning. It's actually the way you behave as a unit. Your culture, your existing culture, generally drives your performance. So if you have a habit of not meeting targets, or you have a habit of not challenging people, then you'll have a certain performance. So the point is that what you need to do, if you're trying to improve the performance, let's say improve the lead time by 20%, if you think you're only going to do that by applying some thinking to a value stream map, or coming through some calculation, and that's what we need to do, improve performance, forget it, it's not going to happen. I can guarantee it. You need to change your organizational habits, okay? You've got to change your muscle memory. And you need to do that by considering how the organization ticks. So it's the way you reward people, because you're not just looking at you, you're not just looking at the management team, you're looking at everybody in your organization pulling together, yeah? Everybody having a different habit. You've got to change it. So things like reward and recognition, the way you govern the organization, job roles, structure, it still comes down to factual things, but you need to consider all those if you're going to get an organizational performance change, okay? Not going to talk about that today, but that's a really important element if you're going to see improvement in a significant way. We also, and we'll touch on this, who's heard of John Kotter? John Kotter? Ah, great. Most of you haven't, so it gives me a chance, okay? So John Kotter will talk about a way to identify and improve performance of a change program. We'll come on to that. And that's what we're going to major on today as an example. Now, you need, therefore, not just to be technically competent, you need to develop the competency of how to manage change, okay? Absolutely essential, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So, what about the design culture? Well, I don't want to dwell too much on this, but you do need to develop those winning behaviors. And if I said to you today, what are your winning behaviors? Most organizations wouldn't know what you were talking about, okay? So you need to think about, practically, on the shop floor, in your management team, how do we need to behave if we're going to be at the top of our game, right? So, for example, you know, we want all our operators, whether they're in the shop floor, in the warehouse, in a truck, in a distribution center, in an office, in marketing and sales, in procurement, wherever their shop floor is, we want them to take ownership for improvement, yeah? We want them to be able to respond autonomously, by themselves, on a continuous basis. Oh, right, okay, well, that's a good start. Okay. We want this speed of solving problems. We want sustainable problem solving, etc., etc. So we need to paint a picture of what our world would look like, right? Absolutely essential. Okay, so that's what we need by the desired culture. But to do that, you need, if you're a leader in your shop floor, you need to be out there every day, every opportunity in creating that culture, okay? So we can do something structurally. Yes, we can change job roles. Yes, we can change things like, say, reward and recognition. We can change our bureaucracy, okay, the way we administer ourselves. But at the end of the day, that's a framework. What you need to do is have a situation whereby you're constantly reinforcing that culture and giving coaching, etc., to achieve it. I'm going to talk through the practicalities of doing that in a second. So you need to do it at the place of work. How much time do you spend at your place of work with your team? 10% of your time? No, let's start. Most of you will be 70%, presumably. 60%? 50? 50. That's fantastic. Well done. Most people, most managers, tend to spend, 10, 15% actually with the workforce, supporting them in order to take responsibility for problem solving and changing the culture. So if you're trying to create this new culture, I'm afraid you need to turn it on its head a little bit, and you need to spend an awful lot more time out there, okay? So I'm going to dwell a little bit on this element. And this is the element we call shop floor excellence. And I can't stress it enough, we're not talking about a factory shop floor necessarily. What we did talk about is, I've lost my coin, David. Okay, pretend I've got a coin in my hand, right? What we're talking about is your shop floor. It could be in a sales office, it could be in a distribution centre, it could be in a project office, a design office, it might be even at the customer. That's the shop floor we're talking about. Okay, so we need to have that in place. So, the first thing to consider is just come back to that very point about how you improve and how you think about your competency base. Think about your competency base and the competency of your people that work for you and your colleagues and your bosses like a coin. So if you're trying to improve the performance of an organization, okay, or an individual, don't get seduced into thinking purely about technical competencies, whether that's the competency to be able to understand how the process works or do the finances or apply lean, Kaizen and all these tools and techniques. You definitely need those, but there's more to it than that. Turn the coin the other way around. It is lean and change management and all that we're trying to do, as I say, has two sides to it, but they're one at the end of the day. The other side is how do you change behavior? And what behavioral competencies do you have and you've developed in order to make that change? Do you know, for example, how to go out into the workplace and engage somebody? Do you know how to go out there and inspire them? Do you know what you shouldn't do not to engage them? Yeah? Okay? So it's really important that we develop those competencies. And I'll touch a little bit more on that as we go forward. So it's a coin. Think of it like a coin. Right. So one of the key elements of any improvement program is the concept of creating new standards. Okay? So in basic terms, what you're trying to do as you improve performance, you improve performance from a zero position or an original position, and you fix it at a new position by changing standards. So it could be a physical standard, okay, we're going to change the equipment, or we're going to change the method, or we're going to change the materials, or we're going to change the competency of the person, whatever it happens to be. We change the standard, okay? Now, as a leader, the way that you exhibit your behavior, how you promote your standards is very important. Because if I'm trying to follow you, I'll only ever follow you if you're trying to create high standards if you do what? You exhibit them yourself, you know? You have to create high standards. One of the simplest ways to do that, interestingly enough, is this concept of timekeeping. Really easy one. Don't want to get lost in this. But if you're a good timekeeper and you arrive at a meeting on time, you take the right length of time to hold the meeting, if you ensure that all your deliverables are delivered on time, how are people likely to respond to you if, by comparison, you may have a colleague who doesn't deliver things on time, doesn't turn up a meeting? Meetings tend to drift on. Who's likely to inspire and get a better response from the workforce? It's going to be the first guy, isn't it? Okay? That's generally where we are. So simple things like timekeeping, the way you present yourself, the way you're consistent in the way you interact with people, act on your promises is really important. And then you go from an I have the standard to eventually we have the standard. And you start to own it. You can't afford to give that up. Very important. So right at the heart of it is that concept of standards. The next piece is that you need a vision. Now, it's no good talking to a picker in a warehouse or an operator on the line or a teleoperator at a desk on a phone or customer services about, oh, by the way, our vision is to increase the profitability of this company by 10%. Reduce the lead time by this, etc. It just doesn't inspire. It means nothing to them. So you've got to create a vision that's meaningful for them. Because you've heard about this concept, I'm sure, that all they're interested, what we're all interested in it, if you're trying to sell me something, you're considering, what's in it for me? Okay, what's in it for me? So when I'm painting a picture of, let's say, an operator on the shop floor, it's maybe, if I'm applying these techniques, is how can I improve this environment in such a way that maybe my job's easier, yeah? Or I get listened to, I can influence the future, I can change things, I can become more competent, I can be more saleable, I can be promoted, etc., etc. Okay, so that's what we need to do. And then the other thing is that you need to drive in that direction. So you need to create a program whereby you're creating that vision. It's no good creating a vision with somebody if you're not demonstrating you're trying to create it. So the idea of shop floor excellence is you're trying to do that on a continuous basis. And I'll come on to the sort of this time scale I'm talking about in a second. The next piece is problem solving. If you think, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to do with an improvement program? Well, in essence, the distinct difference, if you really want to boil it down to its basics, between traditional management and, let's say, a world-class manufacturing or a lean or a TPM program, The bottom line is, what we're trying to do there is get, rather than us as managers and leaders do all the problem solving, we're trying to get ownership of everybody doing problem solving. That's it really at the end of the day. If you really want to boil it down, we want everybody, every day, every minute, every shift, to be problem solving to improve the performance of the environment. So, and there's a number of strands to this. So why would we want to dwell on this one here? Now, if you look at problem solving, if you're able to make it simple and really easy to articulate, A, it's easy to train. Secondly, it's easy to coach, particularly, and it enables the leaders to be able to get the language built into the organization as a whole, yeah? And you keep on repeating it. This is how you define a problem. This is how you understand the system. This is how you restore basic conditions. This is how you get to the root cause. This is a functional failure. This is a failure mode. When you do that, you create new muscle memory. You change the culture. So by having the same language, a repetitive language, you end up ultimately involving everybody in problem solving. The other thing is to support that is visual management. Because what you need to know, what's okay and not okay. Now, I'm from the UK, David's from the UK, and, you know, it's hard to believe, isn't it, that we come across to Serbia. And, of course, in England, we drive on the correct side of the road, and you drive on the wrong side of the road, okay? But it's interesting, isn't it? I can come into Tesla Airport, and I can get in a hire car. In fact, I don't even need to speak Serbian. I don't even need to speak English. I can get in the car, once I've got the key. Maybe there's a bit of a discussion about payment beforehand and where the car is. But I can sit in the car, okay, I admit you've not got it quite right. You've got the steering wheel on the wrong side. But I can sit in the car. I know the layout. I've got a gear stick. If it's an automatic, you know, it's got some letters that you don't need to really need. I can recognize them. I can understand. I can see where the petrol gauge is. I can see where I am in terms of temperature. And generally, the steering wheel sits in a position that I know it's central, okay? And then I can start the ignition and I can get the handbrake and I can drive off. And then, God forbid, I'm on the road. You know, this English guy on the wrong side of the road in this foreign country. But I have lots of confidence because I use visual management in order to change lane. I can look at signs. I don't even need to read them. I just know Novi Sad, well, that's a word. It's a shape. I'll just follow that sign, okay? I can drive down the road and I can go from the slow lane to the outside lane and then into the middle lane and into the outside lane. I can see a junction coming up. I can see 300-meter sign, 200 meters. None, it doesn't say 300 meters, does it? It's got 3 dashes, 2 dashes, 1 dash. And I know where I am. I can drive around Serbia perfectly safe. Don't say anything, David, all right? So that's what I do, and that's using visual management. So I can use it to optimize my journey throughout Serbia in a safe manner. What also it enables me to do, because of visual management, it enables me to see what's okay and not okay. All right? So I can see in the car, a yellow light comes on, I need some more fuel, or I need more oil, or I need some water. Visual management, okay? If I'm on the road and I see a guy in the outside lane, I know that's wrong. I don't know what's going on, but he's in the wrong lane. I will drive with caution. I'll make sure I'm safe. Now, so imagine that in your environment, where whoever you put in position, without any education or minimal education, could actually run your processes optimally, in a safe manner, okay? In an optimal manner. Wouldn't that be great? Yeah? So that's where we need to try and get to. What it also enables is that if it is in a poor condition or a poor state, it enables and supports decision making. So one of the things you need to do in your Gemba, in your shop floor, is create an environment that has visual management developed so you can optimize your performance in the following way. Okay? So that's important. Now, sorry guys, I'm getting a bit of a dry mouth here. Now, the last part I'm going to talk about is morning on the shop floor. Okay? Now, why do we talk about morning on the shop floor? Why don't you just say being on the shop floor? Now, if you want to make a change, guys, you need focus. So, you need to have focus at the beginning, traditionally, of when work starts. And what do we mean by focus? In order to get that culture change, you have to change. You can't just change individually. You've got to change as a unit. You've got to change as a team. Now, in order to do that, you've got to be to work in concert. You've all got to work together in such a way that you're changing that. It's a huge, difficult thing to do, change culture. You think about children. Think about yourself. Think if you've got children or sisters or brothers or whatever. Just a simple thing. I've got 3 daughters. Thankfully, they've left home now. No, that's another story. But no, they're gorgeous. They're gorgeous. But I can remember when they were young, just trying to get them to sit at the table, use a knife and a fork in the right position, and don't leave the table until you've finished eating, and mum and dad let you do that. That took about 25 years, you know, to get my organisational habits. Maybe not so long, but you have, and I'm just using it as an analogy, you have to constantly be reinforcing the behaviours you expect. You can't do that by yourself. You've got to do it with your colleagues in your team. And that's where morning shop floor comes in. Spending a period of time in order to achieve that, okay? In unison. And generally that would be going out to your shop floor with your colleagues, your boss, your peers, in order to influence the shop floor behaviour. These things I've just been talking about. And then the other thing, of course, is you need to be following up and supporting the organisation to do that. So it's not just a one-off, you'll be constantly thinking of reinforcing the culture through follow-up and support. But that's not it, guys. This is the area we're going to focus on today. You need all those elements in. So many of you will have seen lots of those, but having it together in one place and having an agenda that consciously drives these things, maybe you haven't. So the last piece is, how do you manage that change? Because the reality is, it's like me driving along the road from Belgrade, from Tessa Airport to Novi Sad. You know, there's barriers occur. Wagons get in the way. You know, David's the navigator, so we probably ended up in another country at some stage. You know, it's just one of those things. So you need to be able to navigate around barriers, yeah? You've got to see them, okay, first of all. Then when you've recognised them, you've got an alternative. You can either accept them and navigate around them, or you may need to eliminate them, yeah? So you need to think, so what the heck would those barriers be? And that's where John Cotter comes into this a little bit. Just bear with me, guys, sorry. So this guy, John Cotter, many of you heard about him. He's a very bright guy. He's an academic. And he looked at all sorts of change programs. You know, change programs like you're involved in here, if you're involved in end-to-end supply chain. Cultural changes in countries. Maybe Olympic Games. All sorts of things which are massive changes, yeah? That they wanted to achieve. Where, in essence, you were trying to get a lot of people aligned in order to deliver that change in an effective and efficient way. And he came up with this empirical data. He said, hey guys, if you want to have success, there's 3 phases, and he described it in 8 steps. And the first phase is this. It's initiate. And the first one was creating a sense of urgency. So if you want me to move from this place to somewhere else, there's got to be a damn good reason for it. Particularly if you're trying to get everybody to move in unison. Okay, and they create this thing called a burning platform, and I'll come back to talk a little bit about that more in a second. The second one is to build a guiding coalition. So a guiding coalition is having a group of leaders who drive the program, and some of them will be formal leaders. They'll be recognized as leaders in the structure of the organization. Some will be informal leaders. You can often find there's 1 or 2 key influences in an organization that you can bring into your team, and it can make life a lot easier, yeah? Okay? They're not necessarily formal leaders, but you get a guiding coalition who are powerful, they're aligned, they trust one another, okay? And they're highly effective. The other then is to form a vision. A vision you can articulate at various levels throughout the organization in the way I described earlier. The next part is to implement it. Okay? You need to engage the volunteers. I'm not going to get lost in this, right? But to engage somebody, if I'm going to engage you, I need to create a vision for you that I want you to follow. I need to demonstrate commitment, not by just saying, but by doing. Okay? I need to have the resources. I need to give you the time. I need to give you the money, etc. I also need to give you the skills and competency to do it, and I need a plan. Without those, you're not going to succeed. Don't want to get lost in that today, guys, but there's a very clear way to assess that. Then what I want to do is I want to remove the barriers. Now, what I'm talking about here are ways that you remove the barriers. So all these different steps are barriers if they're not achieved. So can you look at your organisation as a whole and eliminate the barriers? Could you recognise this? Okay, but you don't need to just do it at a high level. You can actually do it at a team level. You know, has this team got a clear vision? Is the team that's managing the change around it, is it a powerful coalition? Have we created a sense of urgency? The other thing you've got to do is generate short-term wins. I mean, how many programs or initiatives have we all been in? Probably everybody in this room, where you've bitten off more than you can chew, yeah? You're just trying to do too much. And that really demoralizes people. Pick small elements and deliver them one after the other. So again, without that, you'll get failure. People get disheartened. And then last but not least, we have to have a sustainability. And this is the point I was making about the plate on the pole. You can't just spin at the same time, speed all the time. You've got to get people to do things more, better and faster. And without that, the natural inclination is to get things to decline and create chaos, okay? And then finally, you embed the success in the culture by just constantly repeating, by the way, sit at the table, use your knife and fork, and don't leave the table until mum and dad say so, okay? So that's the world we're in. And that's the Kotter model. Right, okay, so what I'd like you to do, just have a bit of an interaction now if we can. In your bags, okay, you should have a sheet like this. Okay? If you want an English version, there's an English version at the front as well. Okay? So, this is a questionnaire that we would give to a team to identify, just to get them to think about where they are on a journey of improvement. And what's interesting about this, what it tends to find, is what barriers they may have in order to create a world-class organisation, right? So, if we look at the sheet first, let me just, you'll see it's made up of a number of questions. Okay. I think there's a total of 8 questions per step. And in each question, so here we have on the screen is, let me just show you here, guys. You've got the question, number 1, to what extent have you created a sense of urgency that will enable your organisation to be clear for the need to change now, okay? And then there's 5 sub-questions or evidences that we're looking for. So the first one is, all improvement activities have clear links to the business KPIs to motivate the shop floor teams with a clear understanding why they're important. The financial impact is also understood by the teams. Now, if you look at the bottom, it's got a scoring system, okay? On the right-hand side, you've got 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2 there. And basically, the key for those are, for 0, if you look at the bottom of the page, 0 is little or no activity, 1 is some or partial activity, and 2 is fully comply, I'm an exemplar. Yeah? So, what we'd like you to do is go ahead and score that, if we can. Sorry. So, you would say, okay, I look at the first one, am I 0, 1, 2, 0, 1 or 2, okay? And you would then start filling in this sheet. And then you would sum it at the bottom, sorry. Let me just do something here, guys. So, okay, let me just, it's okay, it's just gone. Is that okay? Has it come back on? Can you see that? It's got put the numbers on it. So here you see there's a score. So you could have scored 1, 2. Hang on, that's gone slightly wrong, guys. Yeah, okay. So what you could, let me just talk through it there. So here you could, it's gone slightly askew here, but you put a score in there. Was it a 0 for this question? Was it a 1 or was it a 2? Yeah? Okay, I might be able to just. Start again. There you go. I've got it aligned. So, question 1, all improvement, blah, 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 is we score a 1 on that one. Okay, so in other words, we're saying some or partial activity. Sub-question 2 is a 0, therefore 0 on that activity. And then the third point, all improvement activities are regularly audited, is a 1. So if you go through that scoring, and you see at the bottom here, eventually you score a total of 3. Okay, have you got that? Okay. Do you understand that? Is that clear? Okay. So, what we want you to do is, for your organisation, right, is assess that and score it, okay? So, if you're in a leadership team, get together as a leadership team and do the scoring, okay? And score yourselves. All I want you to do at the moment is do questions 1, 5, and 8, okay? Questions 1, 5, and 8. So that's the questions relating to a sense of urgency in the first section. Section number 5, how effectively does the leadership and team empower and act on others? And number 8, how are the leadership team creating culture? Okay, so if you'd like to participate, please fill in that sheet, score yourselves. And then what we'd like you to do is for each one of those questions, so I've scored, let's say I've scored a 5, okay, on question number 5. I come over to here. Guys, if I give you attention. And on this sheet, all you do is you take a Post-it. So if it's between 0 and 2, your score for the whole question, you use a red Post-it. Don't write anything on it, just put it on the sheet, okay, like this, yeah? Just like that. So we're using visual management. What's okay, not so good, what's poor, okay? If you score between 3 and 6, you simply put a yellow Post-it on there, and so on, yeah? If it's green, between 7 and 10, you put a green Post-it on, okay? So please, score yourselves. Question 1 is over here, question 5 is here, and question 8 is over here. And just put a Post-it on to where you believe you score, okay?
Jeste razumeli svi šta treba odraditi? Znači ovdje su pitanja, odgovaramo na pitanja, to jest radite samo procedno na pitanja 1, 5 i 8. Možete pisati ovdje brojeve, a možete i lepiti odmah na... Tako je, to je grupa pitanja 1, a pod njim ima po 5 pitanja. Tamo je za pitanje, koji je tu broj? Ne vidimo odavde. Tamo je za odgovore 1, ovdje je 5, a ovdje je 8.
Thank you very much. So, look, give you 15 minutes. So, a minute maximum per question. And let's post them, 5 minutes per question. Let's post them quickly, okay? Okay, I think we're nearly there now. Right. If you could be seated again, please, I'd appreciate that. Then we'll round up now. Okay, so are we all finished? Oh, there's 1 or 2. Well, it's generally quite interesting, actually. If we look, there's some people who think they're in a great position, which is super. And then there's people, I think, a lot of yellows as well, somewhere in the middle. So some good, some in the middle, and then 1 or 2 red. So let me just go through some things you might want to think about. So if we look at number 1, this related to a sense of urgency. okay? And generally, in this particular case, I'll tell you a little story about a sense of urgency, okay? I used to work for a company called ICI many years. I think one or two I was chatting to today actually knew that company. It was a chemical company in the UK. And it employed 55,000 people worldwide, okay? And I was involved in the first divestment from the company. And at the time, it felt like a cruise liner, you know? A huge cruise liner. You're cutting through the waves. There was different departments. If you wanted to go from engineering into marketing, you could do, as a career-wise. There was different levels from top to bottom. You could go through the organization. And quite frankly, I probably believe that I would still be there back in 1980, blah, 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 whatever the year was. And we got sold off. It was the first divestment, and we got sold off out of the 55,000. There was 1,500 of us, right? And we got sold off. And it was like going off this fantastic cruise liner and being put into a little sort of lifeboat and cast away. And I was very angry at the time. I shouldn't have been too angry at the time, because if I'd looked back at the cruise liner, it had a name on the side of it. And the name on the side was Titanic. And she was going down, okay? Today, nobody works for ICI. 55,000 people, they may work for different companies, but nobody works for ICI. That company has completely gone. And I believe the reason it went was complacency. It was very comfortable. Yeah? It was a very comfortable organization. It didn't have a sense of urgency. It didn't see the competition coming after it. Same with the motorcycle industry. Biggest motorcycle industry in the world was BSA. Who's got BSA in this room? Okay? Not many of us, okay? Birmingham Small Arms. Biggest motors are gone. Complacency. I used to have an Austin 1100, okay? A car. How many Austins have people got today? Again, one of the biggest producers, exporters just after the Second World War. Doesn't exist anymore. Rover doesn't exist anymore. The British Steel doesn't exist anymore. Massive employer. Okay? British Shipbuilding doesn't really exist anymore. All because of complacency. They didn't change quick enough. Okay? So, that's the emphasis. It's good to see here that you do have a sense of urgency. Please be aware of that for those people in yellow, and particularly those people in red. You're probably suffering from a degree of complacency, a degree, not completely. But be positive. You may say, well, hang on, we're a growing organization, you know? We're doing really, really well, okay? And couldn't imagine failing. Who has owned a Nokia? Yeah? Probably most people in this room at one stage may have owned a Nokia telephone. You with me? Okay? How many people own a Nokia today? Probably none. Yeah? Okay? I can remember that. Yes, yes. Do you mind leaving the room? Well done you, well done you. I know they have come back, that's good. But you see what I mean? And that I can remember. Who had a BlackBerry? How many people have got BlackBerries today? You with me? It's amazing, isn't it, how quickly things overtake you, particularly in technology. So, for people who think they're safe, who think they can't be overtaken, be aware, complacency kills most companies, okay, ultimately. If you look at the American Standard & Poor's 500 companies back at the turn of, let's say 100 years ago, and I can't get this absolutely right because I can't remember precisely, but I think probably out of the top 500 companies, there's probably about 5 left. General Electric's one of them, you know? It's amazing. There's been a hell of a reduction in the number of those companies. And they've just lost their way. So that figure might not be absolutely right, but it's to that order, yeah? Okay? So, what do you need to do? So people say, well, how do I create a sense of urgency if I'm going well, if I was a Nokia, okay? How do I do that? Well, I think it's easier if you were a BSA maybe at the time. You know, you could, or you're a company that's struggling. Certainly in the UK, there's lots of good arguments to be able to create a sense of urgency around cost base and things like that. But when it comes to technology, the sense of urgency is wanting to be the best, to be innovative, stay ahead of the game. Might not be the case, but it wouldn't surprise me in maybe 20, 30, 40 years' time, there's that old company that failed called Apple. You know, today it seems impossible to imagine that. But you know, Steve Jobs has moved on. He was the creative hub of that thinking. Who's not to know it's not another BlackBerry, okay? So think about that sense of urgency and try and overcome that. So it's good to see most of you seem to have it, which is fantastic. But what you need to do is articulate that down to the workforce at the shop floor level, and it's meaningful for them. Yes, certainly.
Because I think we should all be very careful with how many times we use the word urgency, you know? Because if we overuse it, we tend to get people like staff don't even believe in it anymore. So I think we should all, I personally avoid it at all times in order to have the support of the staff that one time that I really need it, you know?
Thank you very much for that. That's a really good point. What you can't do is you can't become a bully. You know, you can keep on bullying people and eventually somebody will say, well, hit me then, you know? It's got to be done in a constructive way, in a careful way. But thanks for that. If we look then at this area here, we talked about step 5, how to effectively does the leadership empower others to act. And just as a helping hand, again, it looks like people have got some great successes here, but there's a lot in yellow. Just to help you here, if you want to empower somebody, an individual, you've got to, first of all, create a vision for them. Okay? You've got to know where you're heading. Where are you asking me to go, boss? You know? Where's the next step? What you've also got to do is create commitment from you. You have to demonstrate commitment, not just verbally by acting. So those of you who are familiar with Lean and TPM and WCM will have heard about pilots, management models, where you as a leadership team need to get really stuck into the detail, learn how to apply the tools and techniques, and demonstrate to everybody you're committed. Not just a one-off, but continually, okay? The other thing you need is resources, yeah? So it's euros, time, people, everything. If you don't have the resources, if you say, great vision, guys, we're committed, but for goodness sake, don't stop the plant and don't spend any time doing Kaizen, okay? And by the way, I know the idea is great, but I'm not going to give you any money to implement it. It's going to fail, isn't it? Okay? The other thing you need, if you're asking me to do something, and it's one of the things we've all been probably in a position is, if you're asking me to do something, I need to be skilled in it. So don't just ask me to do a Kaizen, teach me how to do it. Teach me how to do it properly. Coach me, guide me. Okay? That's really, really important. There's nothing worse. Who's been in a position where they've been consciously incompetent for a while? I certainly have. I can remember being promoted into a directorship, and I thought, goodness me, this feels good. When I got the letter, the next day I felt a little bit, can I do this job? And I couldn't. So for a while I was very anxious. I fortunately got on top of it. But you can imagine when you come into somebody's environment that's been there for many, many years and you're asking them to do Kaizen and improve things. Hang on, guys, what are you talking about? Yeah? It's quite stressful for people. So you need to give them skills and competency. And without going into too much detail, the last thing you need is a plan. So if you have all those 5 elements for a person, you can empower them. Give me a vision that's compelling, yeah? Demonstrate you're committed to that vision. You know, be in a position where you give me the time and the resources to deliver it. Give me the competence to do it. Give me a plan of when we're going to do it and how we're going to deliver. It will work, yeah? It will happen. Right, okay, and the last one was the cultural element, wasn't it, right at the back? And again, it's good to see some people are in a world-class position. Well done there, congratulations. But there's also some reds and yellows there. And just finish this bit off, really. So as leaders, you need to ensure there's clear targets. That's quite obvious. It's things we do normally. But the other thing as a leader, you need not just to be present on the shop floor, as I described before. You need presence. You need to have influence. It's no good just going on the shop floor on a little tour and having a chat with everybody, yeah? Yeah, you've got to, goodness me, this guy's serious, this woman's serious. She's really committed, she's really engaging, you know? She's really motivating me. I love it, you know, I want more of it. You have to have presence. The other thing is you've got to create teamwork. Not easy. You need to understand teams and develop teamwork. The other thing is safety first as a culture. I'll just come back to that, and also a learning culture. Safety is a really, really important one, probably buried a little bit in this. I'm going to finish off this and then just show you these charts. Why is safety first? Do you come across that as a concept in your company? Safety first? Yeah? Yeah. Why do you have safety first? Because the boss tells us to have safety first. We know why, don't we? No, but why would you philosophically want safety first? Any comments on that? Yes, that's absolutely right. It's a great way to demonstrate, and there's a moral obligation in this, to demonstrate you as a leader that you care about people. People will not come and play in your game if you as a leader, or a collection of leaders, or a coalition of leaders, don't demonstrate you care. Yeah? It's not the only way of caring, of course, but safety first is a great way to do that. The other thing that's quite interesting is if I turn around to you and said, hey guys, I've got a great idea. Let's go and do a Kaizen. Yeah, fantastic, yeah? Let's go and reorganize this workplace. Yeah, fantastic. Let's do a value stream map. Yeah, this guy's a lunatic. Why the hell would we want to do that, you know? But if I turn around to you, and probably find it quite stressful, but if I turn around to you and said, hey guys, I'm in a position where I'm not really happy about the safety in this environment. I want your help. Will you help me improve safety in this area? Most people, health and safety, most people would say, of course, I'll help you. Yeah, I'll get engaged in that. Well, fantastic. Let's do that. So, what I want you to do is I will help you and I'll facilitate it and I'll support you, but I really want you to improve your own environment, make it safer, lay it out differently, do it in a different pattern, etc., etc. In other words, what I want you to do is change the standard. I want you to improve things and develop. Now, if you think about that, if I've asked you, and you've generally come in to improve something, and you've maybe done a little bit of problem solving, basic problem solving, and you've improved the standard and the performance, in other words, it's less hazardous, it continues to improve and improve. I don't know if you've heard about this, but that's a concept called autonomous continuous improvement. In other words, people are owning their own continuous improvement. That's exactly where you want to be in Lean. It's exactly where you want to be in TPM. It's exactly where you want to be in WCM. So if you can do it and get it as a practice in safety, then transferring it into other areas like performance improvement isn't easy necessarily, it becomes easier, okay? And then, of course, transferring knowledge and learning is other areas. So those are the areas, safety in particular, getting zero accidents is important. So great to see that. Hopefully that's helped. So what I suggest you might want to do is go and use that form and do it with your team. Find it could be quite good fun, yeah? Okay? Good. So, just as a bit of fun here, and I'm just going to finish up on that. So where is your organisation? Here's an operator, yeah? Not engaged, necessarily, working in a filthy environment, okay? Tools are on the floor, has a mug of tea in his hand if he's in England, coffee if he's in Serbia maybe, yeah? And he's keeping his eye on the clock, just wants to get home, just do the job and get home. Is that where your organisation is? Or have you got an organisation like this where the guy is really professional, he's conscious of safety, he's got his area nice and clean and he maintains that in that way, he's responsible for improving and developing the performance improvement, reducing accidents, improving quality and reducing costs. Is he there? Or are you somewhere between the two? Yeah? Nice to think. I don't want you to answer, but don't wake up early in the morning feeling stressed, okay? The other thing is, what about you? Where are you? Are you this guy, yeah? Still there at 7 o'clock at night, yeah? Okay? Looking a bit stressed. Trying to be Superman, yeah? Or Superwoman. Trying to do everything themselves. It's impossible. Being a slave to technology. Not having any direction, yeah? Papers all over the place. I'm sure there's nobody in this room anywhere like that, okay? Anyway, moving on. Or are you this person, okay? I'm in control, I'm finished, I've got clear focus, okay? I'm very neat, I know exactly which direction I want to be going in. I collaborate with all my colleagues, I'm delegating in a constructive way, so everybody's helping me and helping the process and the company to be successful. I'm clear, I measure my performance, I know where I am, I know where I'm going to be, okay? And I'm both encouraged, I recognize performance, and I get recognized. Is that where you want to be, okay? Maybe somewhere like that. Food for thought. Happy days. Okay, so thank you very much for your attention. I've probably overrun. One great thing about being a consultant, you don't need to do it for real. So maybe my timekeeping on time in full is not there. Just a couple of things, maybe some questions and answers. Just one thing we would promise. Just outside, we've just left you a little pamphlet to explain the methodology. Please take one more than and a card there. If you have any questions, please email them. We'll get back to you within the week, okay? Just on any questions you might have. But thank you very much. Sorry not to be able to speak Serbian, but thank you for your time.